Chapter 28. The night of the big party came. I could practically hear the hubbubs of preparation going on down the hill and felt depressed. Oh my God, sociability is just a big smile, and a big smile is nothing but teeth. I wish I could just stay up here and rest and be kind, but somebody brought up some wine, and that started me off. That night, the wine flowed down the hill like a river. Sean had put together a lot of big logs for an immense bonfire in the yard. It was a clear, starry night, warm and pleasant in May. Everybody came. The party soon became clearly divided into three parts again. I spent most of my time in the living room, where we had a Cal Jada records on the hi-fi, and a lot of girls were dancing as Bud and I and Sean, and sometimes Alva and his new buddy George played bongo drums on inverted cans. Out in the yard, it was a quieter scene, with the glow of the fire and lots of people sitting on the long logs Sean had placed around the fire, and on the board a spread fit for a king and his hungry retinue. Here, by the fire, far from the freneticism of bongoing living room, cacoets held forth, discussing poetry with the local wits in tones about like this. Marshall Dashiell is too busy cultivating his beard and driving his Mercedes-Benz around cocktail parties in Chevy Chase and up Cleopatra's Needle. Dollar is being carried around Long Island in limousines and spending his summer shrieking on St. Mark's Place, and Tough Shit Short, alas, successfully manages to be a Savile Row fop with baller and waistcoat. And as for manual drubbing, he just flips quarters to see who'll flop in the little reviews. And Omar Todd, I got nothing to say. Albert Law Livingston is busy signing autographed copies of his novels and sending Christmas cards to Sarah Vaughan. Ariadne Jones is importuned by the Ford Company. Leontine McGee says she's old. And who does that leave? Ronald Furbank, said Coughlin. I guess the only real poets in the country, outside of the orbit of this little backyard, are Dr. Musial, who's probably muttering behind his living room curtains right now, and D. Sampson, who's too rich. That leaves us, dear old Jaffe, here, who's going away to Japan, and our Wailing Gold book, and our Mr. Coughlin, who has a sharp tongue. By God, I'm the only good one here. At least I've got an honest anarchist background. At least I had a frost on my nose, boots on my feet, and protest in my mouth. He stroked his mustache. What about Smith? Well, I guess he's a bodhisattva in its frightful aspect. It's about all I can say. Aside sneering, he's too drunk all the time. Henry Morley also came that night, only for a short while, and acted very strange sitting in the background reading mad comic books and the new magazine called Hip, and left early with the remark, "The hot dogs are too thin. Do you think that's a sign of the times, or are Armour and Swift using stray Mexicans, you think?" Nobody talked to him except me and Jaffe. I was sorry to see him leave so soon. He was ungraspable as a ghost as ever. Nevertheless, he had worn a brand new brown suit for the occasion, and suddenly he was gone. Up the hill, meanwhile, where the stars nodded on trees, occasional couples were sneaking up to neck, or just brought jugs of wine and guitars up and had separate little parties in our shack. It was a great night. Jaffe's father finally came after work, and he was a tight-built little tough guy, just like Jaffe, balding a little, but completely energetic and crazy just like his son. He immediately began dancing wild mambos with the girls, while I beat madly on a can. "Go, man!" You never saw a more frantic dancer. He stood there, bending way back till he was almost falling over, moving his loins at the girl, sweating, eager, grinning, glad, the maddest father I ever saw. Just recently, at his daughter's wedding, he had broken up a lawn reception by rushing out on his hands and knees with a tiger skin on his back, snapping at the ladies' heels and barking. Now, he took a tall, almost 6-foot gal by the name of Jane and swung her around and almost knocked over the bookcase. Jaffe kept wandering to all sections of the party with a big jug in his hand, his face beaming with happiness. For a while, the party in the living room emptied out the bonfire clique, and soon Syke and Jaffe were done doing a mad dance. Then Sean leaped up and whirled her around, and she made as if to swoon and fell right in between Bud and me sitting on the floor drumming. Bud and I, who never had girls of our own, and ignored everything, and lay there a second sleeping on our laps. We puffed on our pipes and drummed on. Polly Whitmore kept hanging around the kitchen helping Christine with the cooking and even turning out a batch of delicious cookies of her own. I saw she was lonely because Syke was there and Jaffe wasn't hers, so I went over to grab her by the waist, but she looked at me with such fear I didn't do anything. She seemed to be terrified of me. Princess was there with her new boyfriend, and she too was pouting in the corner. I said to Jaffe, "What the hell are you gonna do with all these broads? Ain't you gonna give me one?" "Take whichever one you want. I'm neutral tonight." I went out to the bonfire to hear Cacode's latest witticisms. Arthur Wayne was sitting on a log, well-dressed, necktie and suit, and I went over and asked him, "Well, what is Buddhism? Is it fantastic imagination magic of the lightning flash? Is it plays, dreams, not even plays, dreams?" "No. To me, Buddhism is getting to know as many people as possible." And there he was going around the party, real affable, shaking hands with everybody and chatting. A regular cocktail party. The party inside was getting more and more frantic. I began to dance with the tall girl myself. She was wild. I wanted to sneak her up on the hill with a jug, but her husband was there. Later in the night, a crazy colored guy showed up and began playing bongos on his own head and cheeks and mouth and chest, whacking himself with real loud sounds and a great beat, a tremendous beat. Everybody was delighted and declared he must be a bodhisattva. People of all kinds were pouring in from the city, where news of the great party was going the rounds of our bars. Suddenly, I looked up and Alva and George were walking around naked. "What are you doing?" "Oh, we just decided to take our clothes off." Nobody seemed to mind. In fact, I saw Cacotes and Arthur Wayne well-dressed standing having a polite conversation in the firelight with the two naked madmen, a kind of serious conversation about world affairs. Finally, Jaffe also got naked and wandered around with his jug. Every time one of his girls looked at him, he gave a loud roar and leaped at them, and they ran out of the house squealing. It was insane. I wondered what would ever happen if the cops in Corte Madera got wind of this and came roaring up the hill in their squad cars. The bonfire was bright. Anybody down the road could see everything that was going on in the yard. Nevertheless, it was strangely not out of place to see the bonfire, the food on the board, hear the guitar players, see the dense trees staying in the breeze, and a few naked men in the party. I talked to Jaffe's father and said, "What do you think about Jaffe being naked?" "Oh, I don't give a damn. Jaffe can do anything he wants as far as I'm concerned. Say, where's that big old tall gal he was dancing with?" He was a pure Dharma Bum Father. He had it rough too. In his early years in the Oregon woods, taking care of a whole family in a cabin he'd built himself and all the horny-headed troubles of trying to raise crops in merciless country in the cold winters. Now, he was a well-to-do painting contractor and had built himself one of the finest houses in Mill Valley and took good care of his sister. Jaffe's own mother was alone living in a rooming house in the north. Jaffe was going to take care of her when he got back from Japan. I had seen a lonely letter from her. Jaffe had said his parents had separated with a great deal of finality, but when he got back from the monastery, he would see what he could do to take care of her. Jaffe didn't like to talk about her, and his father, of course, never mentioned her at all. But I liked Jaffe's father, the way he danced, sweating and mad, the way he didn't mind any of the eccentric sights he saw, the way he let everybody do what they wanted anyway, and went home around midnight in a shower of thrown flowers, dancing down to his car parked in the road. Al Lark was another nice guy who was there. Just kept sitting sprawled with his guitar, plucking out rambling blues chords, or sometimes flamenco, and looked off into space. And when the party was over at 3 a.m., he and his wife went to sleep in sleeping bags in the yard, and I could hear them goofing in the grass. "Let's dance," she said. "Go to sleep," he said. Syke and Jaffe were sore at each other that night, and she didn't want to come up the hill and honor his new white sheets and stomped off to leave. I watched Jaffe going up the hill, weaving drunk. The party was over. I went with Syke to her car and said, "Come on, why do you make Jaffe unhappy on his farewell night?" "Oh, he was mean to me. The hell with him." Come on, nobody will eat you up the hill. "I don't care. I'm driving back to the city." "Well, that's not nice. And Jaffe told me he loved you. I don't believe it. That's the story of life, I said, walking away with a huge jug of wine hooked on my forefinger, and I started up the hill, and Herzog trying to back up her car and do a U-turn in the narrow road, and the back end landed in the ditch. She couldn't get out and had to sleep on Christine's floor anyway. Meanwhile, Bud and Coughlin and Alva and George were all up in the shack, sprawled out in various blankets and sleeping bags on the floor. I put my bag down in the sweet grass and felt I was the most fortunate person of the lot. So the party was over and all the screaming was done, and what was accomplished? I began to sing in the night, enjoying myself with the jug. The stars were blinding bright. A mosquito as big as Mount Sumeru is much bigger than you think, yelled Coughlin from inside the shack, hearing me sing. I yelled back, a horse's hoof is more delicate than it looks. Alva came running out in his long underwear and did a big dance and held long poems in the grass. Finally, we had Bud up talking earnestly about his latest idea. We had a kind of new party up there. Let's go down to see how many gals are left. I went down the hill rolling half the way and tried to make Sai come up again, but she was out like a light on the floor. The embers of the big bonfire were still red hot, and plenty of heat was being given off. Sean was snoring in his wife's bedroom. I took some bread from the board and spread cottage cheese on it and ate and drank wine. I was all alone by the fire, and it was getting gray dawn in the east. Boy, am I drunk, I said. Wake up, I yelled. The goat of day is budding dawn. No ifs or buts. Bang! Come on, you girls, gimps, punks, thieves, pimps, hangmen, run! Then I suddenly had the most tremendous feeling of the pitifulness of human beings, whatever they are. Their faces, pained mouths, personalities, attempts to be gay, little petulances, feelings of loss, their dull and empty witticisms so soon forgotten. Ah, for what? I knew that sound of silence was everywhere, and therefore everything everywhere was silence. Suppose we suddenly wake up and see what we thought to be this and that. Ain't this and that at all? I staggered up the hill, greeted by birds, and looked at all the huddled sleeping figures on the floor. Who were all these strange ghosts rooted to the silly little adventure of Earth with me? And who was I? Poor Jaffe at 8 a.m. He got up and banged on his frying pan and chanted the Gochami chant and called everybody to pancakes.